For those of you who missed the last two episodes, let me bring you up to speed. In 2001, I set out on an adventure by riding my bicycle across the United States. I did this again in 2002 and 2003. The footage you are watching is a mix of all three trips. The first trip I met Hema, an Egyptian boy that I ran into in the deserts of California. Hema rode with me all the way to Georgia. In 2002, I rode it alone, and in 2003 with Trey Goebel. Trey was a 16-year-old in my youth group at Horizon Baptist Fellowship in Summerville, Georgia. Now, during the last two episodes, I crossed California and Arizona, and am currently in Clovis, New Mexico, only a few miles from Texas. I've climbed mountains and crossed deserts to get to this point. I've ridden for 13 days in temperatures well over 110 degrees. The finish to this ride is in Tybee Island, Georgia, where my journey will end at the Atlantic Ocean. I've ridden 1,093 miles, but still have 1,500 miles to go before I can finish. It's been great so far with lots of riding and new discoveries to go. Let's set out for Texas.
Okay, I'm starting off from Clovis this morning, 66 miles to Plainview, Texas. Hope to be there by lunch. Talk to you later.
This was my second trip across country. It was a beautiful morning, and hopefully it would be a beautiful day. I just turned 40, so you can hear me grunting and complaining as I started this day's ride to Plainview.
Ankle still feels a little bit on the strained side. Feels a lot on the strained side. I don't know why. Okay, today we're going into Texas, folks. Another state down. This place is called Farwell, Texas. First Texas town I've come into.
One of the odd things about crossing the country is how quick the landscape changes. Just yesterday I rode through the barren plains of New Mexico, but only a few miles into Texas I began to see huge fields and lots of farmland.
Actually, tonight we'll be spending the night in Tornado Alley.
On my third trip to Texas, I learned why they call it Tornado Alley. Trey Goebel, the kid from my youth group I mentioned earlier, was riding with me. We decided to ride a different route that would carry us through the small town of Muleshoe, Texas.
Coming into Muleshoe, Texas. 4,800's population here, not a very big town, but hey, for this area, it's big.
So after we had a short rest stop in Muleshoe, we headed out for Plainview. Just a few miles later, the humidity rose rapidly and the winds picked up. For some reason, I had a bad feeling about riding farther, so we turned back for Muleshoe. Once we were at the only motel in town, a huge storm hit. Although I don't have any pictures of the storm itself, the next morning when we left town, flooded ditches and debris were everywhere. After that, I had no doubt as to why this place bore the name Tornado Alley. Other than an occasional tornado, Texas is a beautiful state. Riding through Texas kind of made me feel like I was nearing home. I was really enjoying this part of the ride. With a great tailwind and mild temperatures, I had left behind the barren desert for rich green pastures. I was in another world, but soon I had to come back down to earth. Earth, Texas, that is.
Well, according to this sign, I've ridden just a little bit farther than I meant to. Earth is straight ahead.
One of the sad facts about Texas is that a lot of the small farming towns like Earth, Texas are quickly becoming a thing of the past.
This is Earth, Texas. Most of it's closed. It's one of them dying farm towns.
Well, back to the ride at hand. I was on my way to Plainview, Texas, and was making really good time when I learned another important lesson about riding in this big state. Big headwinds. Where I'd been blessed with great tailwinds over the past few days, this day would try my patience and my stamina. There's nothing like a big headwind to change the best of moods into a depressing fight to try and stay motivated. Where I was averaging 15 to 20 miles per hour was now reduced to a blistering 5 miles per hour. The best way to look at it's like this. I was 23 miles away from Plainview, and when I was averaging 20 miles per hour, at that speed, I would have made it there in 1 more hour. Now with the wind in my face, if I stayed at my current speed of 5 miles per hour, I would be on the bike for 4 more hours. Now that's depressing. We're going to take a break for a commercial while I pray for a tailwind. Well, the winds are still howling at about 25 to 30 miles per hour right in my face, but I was determined to make it to Plainview before dark, even if that meant riding in the ditch.
23 miles to Plainview. Let's just see how long it takes to get there. Well, the road didn't curve. I'm managing about 6 to 7 miles an hour. This wind's killing me. It's gonna blow me off the road once. Fill my face full of dust in my mouth. I'll show you what I'm doing to get out of the wind. It's not getting me completely out, but it's getting me out enough that I can gain a mile or 2 an hour. So I'm doing it. It's 3:40. In actuality, I should have been here. If it hadn't been for the wind, I'd have been here about around 2 o'clock. So it took me another hour and 50 minutes or so, 40 to 50. I'm here at Plainview, or in Plainview, Texas. This has been a hard ride today. A lot of headwind and a lot of dust, so I'm pretty nasty. I'm gonna go in and get a shower and try to grab something to eat and wash some clothes tonight.
With a good shower to wash away all the dust in my eyes and a peaceful night's sleep, I headed 118 miles east of Plainview to Paducah, Texas. Just to show you how male bravado plays into the mix, on my second cross country I was riding to Paducah when the temperature dropped and it began to rain. I was soaking wet and freezing when a local minister passed by in a pickup truck and offered to give me a ride into town. I only had 20 miles to Paducah and wanted to ride it, so I refused his offer. After quite a bit of persuading, he finally talked me into throwing in the towel and hitching a ride. Cold and wet, I unloaded my bicycle at the only lodge in town. This old building, which used to be a funeral home, has been converted into a hunting lodge. On my second trip there with Trey, I filmed the inside to show just how nice it is. If for some reason you find yourself in Paducah, then look up the hunting lodge there. Paducah, just like Earth, Texas, used to be a thriving farming town, but the days of the mom and pop stores in this town, just like hundreds of others across our nation, have vanished into the past. All that's left to remind us are the empty, rotting buildings that still stand as a testament of times gone by. Now, the one thing you can always count on during a trip like this is mechanical problems. On my first trip, during the first day of riding, about 40 miles from San Diego, my gear shifter cable broke. It caused my bike to stay in the lowest gear on the chainring. I managed to patch it back together though, and rode like that for 2 days across deserts until I found a bike shop that could repair it. During that same trip, Hema had a new Cannondale touring bike, and for some reason it kept breaking spokes on the rear wheel. Finally, in Texarkana, Arkansas, we found a bike shop and got that fixed. Another problem I had was on the all-night ride from Blythe, California to Phoenix, Arizona. While cruising at about 25 miles per hour on a huge downhill, the bracket on my pannier rack broke. The rack fell to the ground and I drug it down the interstate until I could stop. A couple of bungee cords fixed that problem until we reached Phoenix and a bike shop. During my second trip, I was 20 miles outside of Wichita Falls, Texas, when I noticed my rear tire was about to go flat. As I said in the first episode, the rear tire is not the one you want to go flat. In order to remove the wheel, you first have to take off the pannier bags. Anyway, once I fixed the flat and got the bags back on, I started out only to notice my rear wheel was warped. It was warped so bad, in fact, that I had to disconnect my back brakes in order to get it to roll properly. After reaching Wichita Falls, I found a bike shop and discovered that my wheel was cracked. That wheel had over 10,000 miles on it, and it was a miracle that I made it into Wichita Falls at all. On our third trip, Trey and I both had problems with flats. I'm not sure how many we had, but let's just say we got so fast at changing them, we probably could have worked with a NASCAR pit crew.